Welcome to our video exploring the fascinating world of Pokemon and their placement on the Tree of Life. Today, we take a closer look at Feraligatr and its connection to Aerodactyl. Ready? Let's go! Avesuchia is a cladistic term within the archosaurs, referring to the lineage that includes modern crocodiles and birds and their extinct relatives. In much of the scientific literature, it is treated as roughly equivalent to Archosauria, though its exact usage can vary slightly depending on the taxonomic framework. In all cases, it lies deep within the diapsids and encompasses the evolutionary line that gave rise to the classical archosauriforms. In practical terms, Avesuchia represents the bird-crocodile line of archosaurs, those species more closely related to birds and crocodiles than to other diapsids. This grouping strongly overlaps with Archosauria, the well-established clade that includes crocodiles, birds, non-avian dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and numerous extinct relatives. Archosaurs dominated terrestrial ecosystems throughout much of the Mesozoic era, and with more than 10,000 living bird species, plus the surviving crocodilians, remain a major component of modern vertebrate diversity. Within this framework, the lineage leading to modern crocodiles includes Crocodilia, the extant crocodilians, various extinct archosaur groups such as phytosaurs and Rauisuchians. The lineage leading to dinosaurs, birds, and pterosaurs is defined as the clade containing their last common ancestor and all of its descendants. Avesuchians represent one of the most successful vertebrate radiations in Earth's history. They include the dominant terrestrial vertebrates of the Mesozoic, non-avian dinosaurs, the only surviving lineage of flying reptiles, birds, the largest living reptilian predators, crocodilians. For over 250 million years, their evolutionary diversification has shaped both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Crocodiles, in the broad sense, belong to the order Crocodilia. Today, approximately 26 living species are recognized, grouped into three families: Crocodilidae, true crocodiles; Alligatoridae, alligators and caimans; and Gavialidae, gharials. In a narrower usage, the term crocodiles refers specifically to members of Crocodilidae. Modern crocodilians inhabit rivers, lakes, wetlands, and estuaries in tropical and subtropical regions. The saltwater crocodile also frequents marine environments and coastal areas, particularly around northern Australia and parts of Southeast Asia. Their seemingly ancient, lizard-like appearance reflects a suite of adaptations to an aquatic ambush predator lifestyle: a laterally flattened tail for propulsion, a low, streamlined body, and elevated eyes and nostrils that allow them to remain almost entirely submerged while breathing and observing their surroundings. Alongside birds, crocodilians are one of the two surviving branches of Archosauria. The other archosaur groups, pterosaurs and non-avian dinosaurs, having gone extinct. Although modern crocodilians comprise far fewer species than birds, their close evolutionary relationship is evident in numerous anatomical traits, including aspects of skull structure, and most notably, their fully four-chambered heart. Because of the bony plates embedded in their skin, known as osteoderms, crocodiles are often referred to as armored reptiles. The body plan and physiology of modern crocodilians are strongly shaped by their semi-aquatic lifestyle. Key adaptations include a flattened, streamlined body, a typically broad and low snout, and a laterally compressed tail that functions as a powerful propulsive paddle. Compared with most other living reptiles, crocodilians are large animals, reaching body lengths of roughly 1.2 meters in the smallest species to about 6 to 7 meters in the largest, depending on the species. Because body mass scales approximately with the cube of body length, smaller species usually weigh well under 100 kilograms, whereas the largest living species can exceed 1,000 kilograms. Fossil crocodiliforms included even more massive forms, some exceeding 12 meters in length and potentially weighing over 10 tons. Crocodilians continue growing throughout most of their lives, but their growth rate slows considerably with age, so older individuals increase in length by only a few centimeters per year. The crocodilian skull is relatively elongated compared with that of many other reptiles, and in certain species it is extremely extended. The snout accounts for a large proportion of the skull, often more than 2/3 of its total length. Snout shape varies according to diet. Many species possess a relatively broad, generalized snout suited to capturing a wide range of prey. In contrast, fish-specialized species such as the gharial, Gavialis gangeticus, and the sundagharial, Tomastoma schlegeli, have very narrow, elongated snouts adapted for snapping at slippery prey. Over evolutionary time, the eye sockets have shifted upward on the skull, and in living crocodilians, the eyes protrude noticeably from the top of the head. The external bony nostrils are fused into a single opening located at the front of the snout. This opening connects to the throat through an extended nasal passage that is separated from the oral cavity by a fully developed secondary palate. As a result, crocodilians can breathe even when their mouths are open or when most of the body is submerged. The anterior portion of the secondary palate is formed by the maxillary bones, a feature convergent with mammalian anatomy. Like other archosaurs and diapsids in general, crocodilians possess two temporal fenestrae on each side of the skull. The posterior upper skull roof forms a flat, table-like surface composed of thick bone. The upper temporal fenestrae appear as rounded openings within this skull table and are clearly distinct from the lower temporal fenestrae. The lower temporal fenestra lies behind the orbit and is partly concealed by the overhanging skull roof. Overall, the skull is compact and highly reinforced. With the exception of the jaw joint, it lacks movable elements and is therefore functionally akinetic. The bone surface on the top of the snout, the posterior skull roof, and the outer surface of the lower jaw displays a characteristic honeycomb-like sculpturing. This texture results from the firm fusion of bone and overlying skin, integument, in these regions. On the posterior outer side of the lower jaw lies a conspicuous oval opening known as the mandibular fenestra. The rear end of the lower jaw bears a projection called the retroarticular process. This extension causes the lower jaw to project beyond the back of the skull and serves as a liver and muscle attachment site for the muscles that open the jaw. The conical, single-cusped teeth are anchored in the jawbones in a thecodont manner. That is, the tooth roots sit in sockets, alveoli, as in mammals, and are secured by connective tissue. Clear differences in dental organization occur among the three crocodilian families. Crocodilian dentition is fundamentally homodont, as in most non-mammalian tetrapods. All teeth share the same basic conical shape. However, in true crocodiles, Crocodilidae, and alligators, Alligatoridae, the teeth vary noticeably in size. This condition is described as pseudo-heterodonty. The margins of the upper jaw are undulating in both vertical, sagittal, and horizontal, frontal planes, a feature known as festooning. The largest teeth sit on the crests of these waves, accentuating the size differences along the jaw. The lower jaw margins are likewise festooned, and the enlarged teeth of the lower jaw align with the troughs of the upper jaw. One particularly enlarged element is the fourth tooth of the lower jaw. In true alligators, Alligatorinae, festooning is comparatively subtle. When the mouth is closed, all lower jaw teeth lie on the lingual, tongue, side of the upper tooth row and are therefore hidden from external view. The crown of the fourth lower jaw tooth fits neatly into a pit in the maxilla. In true crocodiles, festooning is more pronounced. As a result, some lower jaw teeth lie partly on the buccal, cheek, side of the upper teeth when the mouth is closed, making them visible externally. The fourth lower jaw tooth fits into a distinct notch along the upper jaw margin. In caimans, Caimaninae, the degree of festooning is intermediate, less pronounced than in true crocodiles, but more distinct than in true alligators. In gharials, Gavialidae, the snout is extremely narrow and elongated and lacks significant festooning except near the tip. The teeth are long, slender, and nearly uniform in size, approaching true homodonty, and are slightly laterally inclined. This arrangement forms a classic fish trap dentition, highly specialized for seizing slippery aquatic prey. Crocodilian dentitions are polyphyodont. Teeth are replaced repeatedly throughout life, as in most non-mammalian vertebrates. Replacement teeth develop within the same alveoli as the functional teeth. In younger individuals, replacement occurs frequently. In large adults, each tooth may be replaced roughly once per year. Over the lifetime of a 4-meter individual, a single tooth can be replaced several dozen times, in some cases up to around 50 times. With advancing age, replacement slows and may eventually cease, so that in very old individuals, the tooth crowns can become heavily worn, sometimes nearly down to the jawbone. Crocodiles owe their German name Panzerechsen, armored reptiles, to their robust scaly armor, which covers the trunk, tail, and limbs. The outermost skin layer, the stratum corneum, consists of multiple layers of keratinized cells supported by collagen-rich dermal tissue. Crocodile embryos begin with only a few such layers. As the animal ages, additional layers accumulate so that in a large adult American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, more than 20 layers may be present. Rather than shedding their skin in a single piece, crocodiles gradually replace outer layers as they wear away. The dorsal scales are particularly large and sturdy and are known as dorsal shields. They are keeled and reinforced by underlying bony plates, osteoderms, which are often keeled as well. Depending on the species, 4 to 10 adjacent osteoderms form a transverse row, and each row corresponds approximately to a vertebral segment of the spine. The neck shields, or nuchal plates, are likewise supported by osteoderms and form patterns characteristic of each species. In most species, the ventral scales are flat, rectangular, and unkeeled, and only in a few forms are they reinforced by osteoderms. Along the tail, the transverse rows of dorsal and ventral shields meet to form complete rings. The upper surface of the tail bears a paired crest of enlarged scales that gradually merges into a single median crest toward the tip. In smaller species, such as the smooth-fronted caimans, Paleosuchus, the dwarf crocodile, Osteolaemus tetraspis, and the black caiman, Melanosuchus niger, the scales on the limbs, neck, and even the eyelids are reinforced with osteoderms. On the eyelids, these bony elements are known as palpebralia. Larger species, such as the saltwater crocodile, Crocodylus porosus, rely primarily on their body size for defense and tend to show less extensive osteoderm reinforcement outside the main dorsal armor. The vertebral column of crocodilians consists of 9 cervical and 17 trunk vertebrae, followed by a tail comprising approximately 35 to 37 caudal vertebrae. The trunk vertebrae are subdivided into 8 thoracic, 7 lumbar, and 2 sacral vertebrae. Most vertebrae are procoelous. The anterior surface of each vertebral body is concave and articulates with the convex posterior surface of the preceding vertebra. Notable exceptions include the atlas, the axis, the second sacral vertebra, and the first caudal vertebra. Crocodiles bear ribs along the entire trunk region, extending to the first caudal vertebra, and they also possess gastralia, abdominal ribs, that are not directly attached to the vertebral column. The sternum remains cartilaginous. The shoulder girdle is relatively simple and conforms broadly to the generalized tetrapod condition. Clavicles are absent, increasing forelimb mobility. The pelvis shows the typical archosaurian arrangement. The orientation of the pubis and ischium reflects their evolutionary ancestry, which included bipedal forms among early archosaurs. The forelimbs terminate in a 5-digit hand, although only the 3 innermost digits bear claws. The hind limbs have 4 functional toes connected by webbing, and the outermost toe lacks a claw. Several organ systems, particularly the respiratory and circulatory systems, are highly specialized for an amphibious lifestyle. The nostrils are positioned far forward and elevated on the snout. The nasal passages are almost completely separated from the oral cavity by the bony secondary palate, and the internal nostrils, choanae, open far back into the pharynx. This arrangement allows crocodiles to breathe while nearly fully submerged, exposing only the tip of the snout above the water. A muscular, fleshy palatal valve seals the pharynx from the mouth cavity when the jaws are open underwater, preventing water from entering the trachea. The secondary palate also enables crocodiles to continue breathing while gripping large prey in their jaws. The lungs are large and subdivided into multiple chamber-like compartments. Ventilation is achieved through movements of the ribcage and by a specialized muscular structure associated with the liver, often termed the hepatic piston, which functions in a manner analogous to a diaphragm. Crocodiles possess a fully 4-chambered heart with 2 atria and 2 ventricles, and the ventricular septum completely separates the ventricles, as in birds and mammals. Unlike birds and mammals, however, crocodilians retain 2 systemic aortae, a right and a left. The right aorta arises from the left ventricle and gives rise to the carotid arteries supplying the head. The left aorta originates from the right ventricle alongside the pulmonary artery. Near the bases of the aorta lies the foramen of Panizza, a small opening connecting the right and left aorta. During normal breathing, this connection allows oxygen-rich blood from the left ventricle to enter the left aorta, producing a controlled mixing of blood in the systemic circulation, a functional right-to-left shunt. During prolonged dives, changes in pressure and vascular resistance alter blood flow patterns, a left-to-right shunt, helping to balance pressures between the ventricles and optimize circulation while submerged. This circulatory adjustment is necessary because, during prolonged dives, the pulmonary artery becomes strongly constricted. As a result, pressure in the right ventricle and in the left aortic root remains comparatively high, despite the greatly reduced heart rate. Because the lungs are filled with air before submergence, relatively oxygen-rich blood can continue to pass through the pulmonary circuit to the left side of the heart, and from there into the right aorta. This ensures that the brain and major sensory organs remain well supplied with oxygen. At the same time, the left aorta primarily carries oxygen-poor blood to parts of the trunk. The presence of a fully divided four-chambered heart is regarded as strong evidence of the close evolutionary relationship between crocodilians and birds. All living crocodilians are anatomically and behaviorally adapted to an amphibious lifestyle and spend much of their time in the water. With the notable exception of the saltwater crocodile, most species primarily inhabit freshwater environments, though some also occur in brackish or coastal marine habitats. Certain species favor open waters, such as lakes and large rivers, while others occupy smaller streams, swamps, or densely vegetated wetlands. Their global distribution is restricted largely to tropical and subtropical regions. Only the two alligator species extend into areas with relatively mild winters at the northern margins of their range. Local occurrence is further shaped by prey availability, nesting opportunities, interspecific competition, and human hunting pressure. All crocodilians are predominantly carnivorous and generally hunt opportunistically, capturing prey they are capable of overpowering. Strong dietary specialization is mainly observed in the extremely narrow-snouted species with fish trap dentition, such as gharials and sundagharials, which feed chiefly on fish. Juveniles and smaller species tend to consume insects, amphibians, and small vertebrates, whereas large adults may attack almost any animal within reach. Cannibalism, particularly involving juveniles, is not uncommon. Despite their often sluggish appearance, crocodilians are capable of rapid acceleration and surprising agility, both in water and on land. They are classic ambush predators, frequently hunting at night. Typically, they remain submerged near the shoreline, approaching silently before lunging forward with powerful strokes of the tail. Their conical teeth grip prey securely, and their massive jaw closing muscles generate exceptionally high bite forces, making escape unlikely. After capture, prey is often dragged underwater and drowned. Studies of stomach contents suggest that a large adult Nile crocodile may consume on the order of several dozen substantial meals per year, averaging roughly one sizable prey item per week. American alligators generally feed more frequently, but tend to target smaller prey items. To tear apart large prey, crocodilians clamp down with their jaws and perform rapid rotational movements around their body axis, the so-called death roll. This twisting action tears flesh at the perforation points created by the teeth. In some cases, carcasses are cached underwater for a period to soften before being consumed. Crocodilians are unable to chew and swallow pieces of flesh whole. Many individuals contain gastroliths in their stomachs. Their precise function remains debated. They may assist mechanically in food processing within the stomach, or they may serve as ballast, helping to regulate buoyancy in water. Observational studies have also shown that several crocodilian species occasionally consume fruits, nuts, and seeds, indicating that their diet may be more varied than traditionally assumed. Reliable data on crocodilian longevity remain limited. Well-documented ages are available primarily from zoological institutions where only a small number of individuals have known birth records. It is uncertain whether captive crocodilians live longer due to veterinary care and consistent feeding, or potentially shorter due to stress and artificial conditions. In wild populations, age is often estimated by counting growth rings in long bones or osteoderms, a method known as skeletochronology. But this technique involves inherent uncertainties. For smaller species, such as caimans kept in captivity, reported maximum lifespans generally range between 20 and 30 years. Larger species, including the saltwater crocodile, may reach ages of around 70 years or more under favorable conditions. Exceptional claims exist of individuals in human care exceeding 100 years, though such extreme ages are difficult to verify with complete certainty. Modern crocodilians, order Crocodilia, are, alongside birds, the only surviving representatives of Archosaura. This makes them the closest living relatives of the great terrestrial and flying reptiles of the Mesozoic. Birds are therefore the nearest living relatives of crocodilians. Because birds and crocodilians have followed very different evolutionary pathways, however, their close relationship is not immediately obvious in their outward appearance. Birds, highly active, endothermic animals, descend from theropod dinosaurs, a lineage of archosaurs that was entirely terrestrial. This terrestrial ancestry traces back to the common ancestor of both the dinosaur and crocodilian lineages. In contrast, the ancestors of modern crocodilians transitioned from terrestrial forms to an amphibious lifestyle, evolving the characteristic semi-aquatic body plan seen today. Among living terrestrial vertebrates, archosaurs have traditionally been regarded as the sister group of squamates, lizards, snakes, and amphisbaenians. Together, these groups form the Diapsida. Since the early 21st century, turtles have also been widely interpreted as diapsids, though their exact phylogenetic position within the group remains debated. What is well established is that crocodilians are more closely related to birds than to any other living reptile lineage. Alligators, family Alligatoridae, comprise 8 living species and include both the true alligators, genus Alligator, and the caimans. Compared with many true crocodiles, alligators generally exhibit somewhat slower growth rates and metabolic activity, though all crocodilians are ectothermic. The Chinese alligator reaches a maximum length of roughly 2.2 meters, whereas the American alligator typically grows to around 4 to 4.5 meters, with exceptional individuals approaching 5 meters. Documented lifespans can exceed 60 years, and in rare cases, individuals may approach or surpass 70 years. In alligators, the lower jaw teeth fit within the upper jaw when the mouth is closed, so only the upper teeth are visible externally. This contrasts with true crocodiles, in which some lower teeth, especially the enlarged fourth lower tooth, remain visible when the jaws are shut. Caimans, including the spectacled caiman and the crocodile caiman, inhabit rivers, lakes, and swamps and feed opportunistically on a wide range of prey. Female alligators are attentive and protective mothers. A clutch may contain several dozen eggs, often up to 50 or more. The eggs are laid in nests constructed from vegetation and mud, where decomposition helps maintain incubation temperature. The female remains nearby during the incubation period of roughly 2 months. After hatching, the young, about 20 centimeters long, are transported to the water in the mother's mouth. She may guard them for many months and sometimes for over a year. Alligators occur naturally in the Americas, American alligator and the caimans, and in China, Chinese alligator. They primarily inhabit freshwater environments but can tolerate brackish water for limited periods. In general, they are considered less aggressive toward humans than some crocodile species, though defensive behavior during the breeding season can occur. In the wild, individuals may live several decades. Many reach ages of 20 to 40 years, with some documented cases exceeding 50 years. Alligator populations were once heavily reduced due to intense hunting for leather, especially when crocodilian skins became fashionable for bags and other goods. Protective legislation in both the United States and China led to substantial recovery in several species, particularly the American alligator. In parts of the southern United States, regulated hunting programs now exist to maintain stable population levels. Of the 8 living alligatorid species, most are currently classified as least concern. The black caiman has recovered in many areas but remains subject to regional pressures. The Chinese alligator, however, is critically endangered, with only a very small wild population remaining, supplemented by captive breeding programs. That's it for now. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at ferret and its surprising connection to Slowbro. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and tune in next time as we continue exploring the Tree of Life, Pokemon Edition.